Ooh, this is going to be a good one. Episode 43 of Easy Talk. Matt McElwrath, thank you for coming on, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude. I would be doing a disservice if I didn't say this. I don't think we would have this podcast if it wasn't for you. Do you recall the lunch that we had with Jeremy Johnson? And you were the one who was like, "Fucking do it, pussy!" Like,
Just
stop talking about
fucking do it, man. Just stop. Yeah, start with what you got.
I was talking to Jeremy about like doing a podcast, and like he was like, "I have some office space, or like I have some space in my warehouse. We could do it there." And then he was telling us where the warehouse was, and me and Frazier were like, "Oh, I don't know if we want to drive all the way out there." You know what I mean? And then you were like, "Why don't you just do it yourself?" I was like, "Fuck! Why don't I just do it myself?"
You're capable.
No, I wasn't really capable, right? It's like you need. I am a firm believer that good leadership. I'm not saying I'm a good leader, but good leadership is like understanding when you don't know something and like picking people's brains that would know way better than you at that specific topic.
Absolutely.
And you were just like, buy this, do this. You're not going to want to do that. You're going to want to do this. Buy that. Okay. Don't suck at podcasting now.
Yeah, now it's on you.
Yeah, now it's on me.
Have you recorded your first one yet? No? Oh.
Do you remember that first one with Whitney afterwards? I was like, I want to apologize to you. I apologize to Whitney, but I need to apologize to you. Because I think I called you like 3 or 4 times. You're like, dude, it was a good episode. I was like, I don't know if it was a good episode.
Like, man, I don't know, man. I don't know if that's ever coming out. I don't know if we want that. I'm like, bro, settle down, watch it, and just have an open mind and realize that's your first episode.
Yeah.
And, you know, how far in are you now? What number is this?
This will be 43.
43 now. And
Yeah,
how much,
4
I mean, granted, that was 43 episodes ago, but like, and you know how much you've progressed, but like, that's pretty good for your first episode, really. Like, you see a lot of first episodes of other podcasts that they're not nearly that good. So.
Well, you know what it was? And I want to talk about NFA, but I'll go on this tangent just for a second. When I first started the podcast, I started it because I wanted to talk. Like, I wanted to talk. Mm-hmm. And then I realized, like, by about, like, the 3rd or 4th episode, I was like, I'm bringing someone on so that I can talk. That doesn't really make much sense, like, functionally, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, anyone who knows me knows I could talk to a brick wall.
You sure can.
But once I stopped talking as much, once I stopped wanting to be heard and I started really listening, then it was easy to like think of questions and like carry a conversation. Because before I had to do prep work. I was like, okay, I'm going to ask this and then I'm going to ask that. And then it just felt like so mechanical.
Right.
After I was just like, you know what? I have like 2 or 3 questions I'm going to ask. And then hope to God that we have some rabbit holes we can go down.
Well, and hope you have a connection, because the point is to like make a connection where it feels like a real conversation. That's what's so alluring about a podcast, is it's people don't get to have an hour or 2 conversation usually.
I know.
You know what I mean?
I heard Tucker Carlson actually explain it very simply. He's like, it used to be that like back in the day, you know, the family would get home together and like you would have like a discussion over like a family dinner.
Absolutely.
Your dad would be like, how was your day, wife? Your wife would be like, how was school, kids? And like you would have this family conversation for that hour and a half. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of ways, you know, times have changed for better and worse. But one of the things that we're missing is like that sit down and really extrapolate and hone in on a conversation. And that's why so many people, when they finally do have that with like a buddy or a friend at the gym, at work, what have you, it's synonymous with the word therapeutic. Like, oh, this was a therapeutic conversation. It's like, no, dude, it was just a conversation.
Yeah, well, it's because like how often do you do, anything, let alone a conversation uninterrupted? Whether it's a phone, somebody else, anything, you know what I mean? But like whenever you're in a podcast studio like this where things are recording, there's no interruptions unless we choose to stop, right? So
that's fair.
I mean, it kind of opens up a different door for dialogue because you're having a thorough conversation.
And it makes sense because, like, there's a lot of reasons why I listen to certain podcasts. Like, I listen to certain podcasts for, like, the educational purposes, like the All In podcast. I listen to that podcast, every episode that comes out in its entirety, just because I love listening to hyper-intelligent people discuss the market, geopolitics, everything that's going on currently, right? Mm-hmm. And it makes sense, and it's been fortuitous to my life. Then I'll listen to like a Joe Rogan podcast with like Russell Crowe today. It was like, it was just fun just listening to 2 guys, especially, you know, Russell Crowe. I remember Gladiator.
Right, absolutely. Well, I watched him with Adam Sandler the other day.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty good, too.
Really good, and it was weird because it was like, you know, after, you know, an hour of watching it, I realized, like, you're starting to see what Adam Sandler's mannerisms are really like in real life.
Real life.
And he really does do all those goofy voices probably just naturally in real life to anyone around him, so that's got to also be somewhat bizarre, but that's a side note. But What's so alluring too about Joe Rogan's podcast is you feel like with the camera angles and everything they do, besides the point of having famous people there to be there, they've scientifically proven like the way he's got it set up, it makes you feel like you're in the room.
Yeah.
Makes you feel like you're part of the conversation.
You're the third man.
You're the third man, right? Or the fourth man, depending on who's there, right? And so, but between uninterrupted conversation and then feeling like you're part of it, that's a whole different like thing that people their brains don't get that very often.
That's a comment we get. So one of the bad things too about having a podcast is every episode I get messages. Either some of them are like, "You're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about." Some of them are like, "Oh, that was such a great topic. Like I didn't think about it that way." But one of the nice things about it is sometimes you'll get like these feelers of like, Tim Lukanoff, who's the state athletic commissioner, we did a podcast with him, and I had like a bunch of people messaging me, like fighters and stuff like that, saying like, I never talked to Tim. Like they saw Tim, but they never knew who Tim was.
Well, and you hear through the grapevine things Tim says to people that are taking out of context because you don't know why he had to say those things, or just you don't know the conversation in general. So it's easy to paint someone a certain way if you don't know who they are. You know what I mean?
I think there's two things that make a great podcast guest. It's transparency, being able to like want to talk about things, right? Because like if you're we've had guests where there was like a list of things that I was not to bring up. And it correlates to me having like a mechanical conversation.
Sure.
There's questions I want to ask, there's avenues I want to go to, and I'm like,
Well, it's also just what about the people who watch this show who want to hear the things about it because they know they come here for a good conversation, not for something that's going to be very PR pre-written. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's not what a 2 hour, 1 hour, 3 hour podcast is for at all. That's
I would agree with that as well. And then the second like variable is I try to express to every guest like, hey, this is like the one time that you will get where people won't interrupt you. Like extrapolate, like tell me all the details that you dive into this topic. Like don't how are you doing? Good. What do you think of this? It's bad. Like,
yeah. Sounds fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the two
very short answers are always like kryptonite to any good conversation.
It's rough. So transparency and elaboration. Dude, so yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much because without your help, I don't think we would have had this podcast set up. I know for a fact it would not look as good as it does. We wouldn't have the hardware that we do. You pointed me in the right direction, so I just one man to another man. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, man. And also good job on, getting and following through because most people would get all this stuff and then realize like you did on that first episode, you're like, oh my God, this isn't, necessarily good. And it's like, you're not going to be a rock star overnight. Like, it still takes, you could have the best gear, the best everything, and it's still going to take time to get in the groove and get, even your own, what you want your podcast to be. Like a lot of people don't realize like they'll start some of the biggest YouTube channels that people love and the biggest podcasts and all that started in one direction and now are in a totally different direction because they found their niche of what they like and kind of developed. You know what I mean? And that's also almost an arc that people follow if they're an early fan, and that gives them something to want to follow more.
You hit the nail on the absolute head because once we had all this equipment and stuff, I remember when we were setting up, I was like, I don't want hardware to be our limitation. I don't want someone watching the podcast and being like, the mics sound like shit or the camera looks bad. So then once we had everything, it was like this immense pressure because then I was like, oh, if this podcast is bad, I'm the reason.
I remember once we set everything up, I was like, hey, have you been practicing any recordings with just your phone just to see how it goes? And you're just like, oh, no, I didn't. And I'm like, yeah, you realize like in a week this is done and it's on you after that. There's no more, I want hardware, I want software, I want this, I want that. It's a wrap. It's time to get busy.
I will say that you were right about one thing. It's just reps. And here's the thing. I would practice like in front of the mirror and things like that, but doing it's kind of like fighting.
Oh, yeah.
Going to the gym, sparring, feels kind of like it. Then you get into a fight with the actual speed, with the actual intensity. And it's like, dude, there's no amount of training I can do to really prepare me for this because it's the intention to do harm on me.
Right.
That is the variable. It's like I can sit here and, practice whatever the hell I want to practice beforehand. But then like when someone sits down and then it's an unfettered conversation where I don't necessarily know where it's going to go. I could ask you a question thinking I know the answer. I've had so many times I've asked people like, what do you think about this? And they zig when I thought they were going to zag. And I was like, oh shit, wasn't ready for this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the reason that whenever we were getting started that I tried to get you to do some pre-recorded versions of yourself, well, for one, you wanted to do monologues, if you remember. That was one of your goals, was doing just monologue stuff, which could still happen and come down the line. But two, it was just really what I wanted you to do was sit in front of a camera where you know it's recording and get over the fact that this is all sitting here.
Yeah.
Because as you know, you've had guests in here before that are just, as soon as you put any of this in any kind of real proximity, it kind of changes
the game.
Anything. And it could be people who are used, like I've seen musicians who used to do a show called the Gaslight Sessions and the Loft Sessions, and we would have musicians come into a studio, and as soon as I turned the cameras on, it was like all of a sudden they'd freeze up, and it's like you do this on stages in front of 5,000-10,000 people, but all of a sudden this is a difficulty to like do it with just a couple camera lenses here, you know.
Terribly sorry to interrupt the content that you're enjoying right now, but if you've been watching our content for the past couple of months, you realize that Easy Talk is a brand new podcast. We're genuinely trying to figure this thing out as we're going. Some growing pains for sure. If you are genuinely enjoying this content, we feel very humble in that, but we would like to ask that you would also subscribe and like to the channel, simply because it does help us in the algorithms and ultimately to grow. So take a second. I'd really appreciate it. And on with the show. Isn't it crazy how like certain variables affect people in certain ways? I can get into a cage and fight half naked and do interviews. Like I did Shamrock interviews and stuff like that where I talked in front of cameras and talked a bunch of shit. Did it just fine. But the second I have to have like an articulate conversation, I'm like, oh shit, like people are going to actually like start wondering if I'm a meathead or like if I actually know what the fuck I'm talking about whatever topic. And that's actually why I pivoted to listening more than talking, because I'm not a subject matter expert on many things. In fact, I would say I'm a subject matter expert on like two things: punch people in the face and finance. Kind of niches, right? Outside of that, I really don't know a whole lot about a whole lot. So like just asking questions to people that know more than me has just proven to be a better product. It's like you're better at this than I am. Talk about your field, talk about your topic, or the topic could be yourself, your history, your past, you know what I mean? And I could just sit back, and the best guests are the ones where like I'm just sitting back listening, just like the guest is.
Yeah,
the viewer. Sorry.
Natural conversation is what is going to be always to me the best content, because then it's not forced.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Then it's like really letting someone get their piece off, but also then whenever you actually say something back, I feel like not only the viewer but you are also just more informed with your rebuttal, if it is with or against what they're saying. You know what I mean? Like you're more informed in what you just said. You listened to them thoroughly. You heard everything they said. You processed it. You still decided what you're feeling initially or was not correct. And then you let that out. You know what I mean? That's a different conversation than the way that people typically instant defense response is what I kind of look at it as. You know what I mean?
I do.
Like instead of hearing it thoroughly, you know.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I have a question. You had your own podcast, right?
I've never had my own podcast. I've had a handful of different things. I used to live stream video games on Twitch, if you would consider that. That's not really a podcast, but
I mean it's a live streaming.
Yeah, it is still like same long form situation. I would be live for 2 or 3 hours at a time playing Smash Brothers with random people online.
Do you still do it or no more?
No, I'm too busy doing
bandwidth.
Yeah, just don't have enough time to put it all together.
Was it enjoyable when you did that?
Absolutely, yeah. It was called Vintage Gamers Club, and I had 3 or 4 other guys that was with us, and we would actually do like events in bars and stuff where we'd go to bars, set up the full live streaming equipment. We'd have a commentator spot. We'd have the gamer spot with a camera on them, have the video game system set up and everything.
The whole shebang.
Similar. Small form Nemesis Fighting Alliance, just in a bar.
So actually that's funny because the day that I met you was actually like a 2-for-1 for Jeremy Johnson, because Jeremy was meeting with you and Matt about some other thing that they were going to do.
I don't remember what it was now, but
but it was like something. I think it was a jiu-jitsu show.
It might have been something about a jiu-jitsu show, yeah.
And then I hijacked the meeting. I was like, hey, how about a podcast?
Yeah.
I'm an asshole.
Hey, now that you're here.
Yeah, totally noted. That's how I met you. And then Matt Frazier was actually the one telling me that like you worked together on NFA. And I knew like everyone in the MMA community, and you were like the one guy I was like, I've never met this guy before in my life.
Yep.
So like obviously NFA just recently had a show at the Armory this previous weekend. Yep. But can you, before we talk about that show, can you walk me through how did you even meet with like Brad Carey or with Matt Frazier about even working with them on NFA?
So Chris Denman, who does commentary for NFA, he was our mutual point of contact between me and Frazier. And he was, whenever Frazier started working on NFA, he kind of like told him, hey, Matt knows a lot about VMix. You should hit him up and see
Which
about
Matt, you?
Frazier. He told Frazier, sorry, there's
we have
so
no
for those
like
that
six
don't know,
Matts.
yeah, there's like so for those that don't know the NFA team, there's me, Matt Frazier, and Matt Sawicki. That's the main three that run the broadcast, and so we just call ourselves Trace Mateos. But no, so Chris Denman told Matt Frazier, hey, you know, I see you're working with VMix and doing these things. Chris Denman also works with VMix a little bit, and he knows that I know VMix pretty well, and so they hired me to come down and consult at NFA 6 just to see what's going on. And like I think I made a timer that night so that they could have like the round timer in real time. They could have it triggering and stuff like that. That was something that had been maybe something they were struggling with or something at the time. You know what I mean? And then, you know, met the camera team they had there, and we were originally going to come in and kind of just add to what was already going on. And you know, I don't know what happened or how or why, but the next show it ended up just being us there. And we were like, oh, okay. So we just kind of like...
When you say us, just you and Matt Frazier?
No, it would have been me, Lincoln, Nelson. That's the guy, if you're in a Nemesis fight, when you look up on the perch, that's who's up on the perch every time. And then Jason Coleman, that's who is always running back and forth between the entrance and has the wireless camera and is going around
God
everywhere.
bless. Doing the Lord's work.
Man, he works harder than anybody, boy. He burns calories. I mean, he's just, you know...
Well, that's one of the things I was like intrigued me the most about this was like, it was a field that I knew next to nothing about, but it was a field that like when I was fighting, I benefited immensely from. Mm-hmm. So similar to how I said to Tim Lukanoff when he was here, like I knew some of what Tim would do, but I never really understood the breadth or the scope. It was the same thing with you guys. Like I knew what the Rashard is basically like the Matt McElwrath of Shamrock FC.
Sure.
I had an idea of what Rashard was doing. Rashard also has a team. He's also got cameramen and all this other stuff.
Right.
So it was interesting to see you work because then it just gave me a whole lot more nuance and appreciation for the craft, right? I was like, oh, okay, I didn't realize there's like all these transitions. And you have a guy at every NFA, you have a guy, which is Matt, who's kind of like the conductor. Right. Like you're the one going camera 1 now, camera 2, get ready. We're going to start this transition.
Right. That's my position. I liken it to basically I'm captaining the ship. Like, if we're all like, especially the beginning of the show, this is like to me, the beginning of the show is like the most intense part of the entire show is like, because to me, it's like we're all on the shore, we're all pushing a boat off, and then we all got to hop in the boat together, and then I can steer this thing, right? And so, like, to me, as soon as we hop in the boat and I can steer this thing and we've got the show off and that first bell rings for the first fight and the first fight is underway,
it's like rinse and repeat.
It's like now I can kind of breathe and assess everything, and then that's whenever the timer really starts for me to see where we're at in a show, so that I can get us, you know, from point A to point B on time.
I want to kind of take a step back and like, okay, so NFA 6, you got brought on to be a consultant. They had their own crew. They had Matt Frazier.
Yep.
NFA 7 rolls around. Now it's
7 was the first one, Farmington. Yeah, I believe.
Where you started, like, quote-unquote, working.
Yeah, working. So I was a cameraman for that show, actually. So me and my guys were all cameramen. That's all we did. So Frazier was sitting at the computer, running the VMix computer. I had a 12-foot crane or a 14-foot crane that could just barely see over the top of the cage side. And so I was able to mechanically move, like what's on the pole now that Jesse runs. He does a great job at it. But I had a more manual version of that for NFA 7. By NFA 8, it was starting to be more, I'm going to step away from trying to run a camera. Although we put the pole in at that point, and that's whenever I was actually literally running the switcher and the camera at the same time with the other guys. No comms yet. We had no communication. So
how are you doing that then?
Oh, dude, whenever we came in originally, it was just like, I didn't even really know. I would be, as the cameraman, I'm down there just like looking around, seeing kind of what's happening. No one knows when their camera's actually on the action.
Can you explain that for a second? Because what VMix is essentially it's a broadcasting software, but what does the O stand for?
Well, VMix is the broadcast software, but like people who've done any kind of streaming and stuff at home that don't have that level of software, it would be like OBS on steroids.
That's what I thought.
It's like a heavy duty professional broadcast version of OBS with like where it isn't just open source everything that makes the features. It's like an paid company with everything.
And if you have one guy controlling that, I mean, he can shift through the cameras as he wishes, right? If you have four
Right.
cameras,
Right.
he can at any point go camera 1, camera 2, camera 3. But you guys, as the cameraman, have no idea if whether or not your camera is quote unquote being used at that specific time.
Correct.
Everything's recording, everything's running.
Totally.
It's just whether or not it's the main
And live on
presence.
pay-per-view.
And live on pay-per-view.
So none of these cameramen knew, and even whenever I first started, and I wasn't even really directing the show then. It was really just me and Frazier by, NFA 7 and 8. It's kind of like figuring it out and getting things adjusted, and me really just seeing what they're doing as a team in general, so I can even figure out how I fit in. You know what I mean? Like, so then by 9, I think is whenever I was my first one that I actually sat in the director's seat, and we had comms for the first time. Which for the people at home, that's when you see the headsets on the cameramen and stuff. They're talking to me. So those guys, I'm back there with a headset, and I'm like, hey, camera 2, I need to come over to you. Make sure you get this guy as they raise his hand. Whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever the thing is that I need, etc. So by then, now the production level is starting to step up. Now we're still doing Arnold Eagles, we're still doing Olympia, kind of that ring at that time. The venues, right? We haven't quite got to like the Ballpark Village era yet. You know what I mean? I kind of see it as eras, right? Of stepping up production. So then we did 9 and 10.
Well, before we move on to that, what is Brad Carey and Marlene and them saying about all this? Like before you, obviously there was a certain level of professionalism with the production.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then after you, I'm sure they notice a difference. What's the conversations like between you and Brad?
Yeah, so it was really, what was really neat was they really trust me and Frazier to let us work on this and really let us put our creative ideas into it. And as long as it just doesn't cost a ton of money or something, we're allowed to just try some things and add some stuff in and do some stuff. And you know what I mean? It's like almost like for me, it's been like an artist outlet almost, because I'm crafting a show. You know what I mean? Me and Frazier, we sit there and we really think about, well, what can we add? How can we do this? How can we do that? What puts us on the level? And also, how do we make these fighters feel like rock stars? They're putting their bodies on the line for all this. A lot of the amateurs and stuff can't get paid because of the state rules and things, right? So like, if you're going to come fight for us, I want you to look like an absolute stud. You look like the star that you're trying to become,
I didn't realize that this was kind of like an open outlet for you, because I'm God bless, I'm not a creative guy. Like I've always kind of gotten my rocks off like through fighting, right? Or some other sort of like physical or mental endeavor. I can't play an instrument. I can't draw. I can't, I'm not a creative guy. So like I'm always fascinated with people who can create something, because I look at a blank piece of paper and I see a blank piece of paper. Yet there's another person with another way of thinking, another purview of life, who can see a blank piece of paper and they look at it as like a canvas. And I always looked at a fight card as like, fighters fighting. But you look at it as like this spectacle, this show. What can we make?
Yeah, I look at it from a fan's point of view. So you fought in it. I've never made the walk. I'm not, that was never my slice of life, right? So for me, it's like, well, I know what you guys are doing though. I see the damage that happens. I've been watching the UFC since the 2000s, so I really know what's going on, and I've also seen their production step up over the years since the 2000s to now. So
would you say that the UFC is the gold standard?
I would say it's hard to say that. They're the gold standard for sure, but like PFL and everybody else is they have major networks behind them at this point. It has nothing to do with the lack of money or anything for them to look like what they need to look like. The UFC just has the brand recognition to be the gold standard. You know what I mean? Of course, they're pushing it forward and they're doing things like they were definitely the first fight series I saw fly a drone around the arena for a crowd shot. You know what I mean?
360 shot.
And all that stuff. And they're always like doing cool new things. I saw one where you can do VR now and have a seat in the row.
I saw that too.
It looks really cool. Yeah.
It's like you're sitting right on the
totally.
cage.
And believe me, as soon as I see weird stuff like that, I start Googling to see how that even works and what it is and how do we do it and is it even logical to add it? You know what I mean?
So you're saying that Brad and Marlene have like pretty much good trust in you. So is it as simple as like they give you a budget and they say, hey, do whatever you want to do, just don't go over this dollar amount?
I don't do anything with the budget. Me and Frazier come up with what we want to do. We tell them about it, and we see like usually me and Frazier make sure it's something that we can logically do before we bring it up. Like there's no reason to go like, hey, we're gonna have like Aerosmith level fireworks, or something insane for a stadium show. Go off in here, forget the fire marshal. We'll just do it this time. None of that. No, it's more like, when we see things that we want to try or, for example, like if whenever you watch the UFC, Megan Levy will be backstage talking. The fighter's off in the distance, passes Megan Levy. The cameraman picks up the fighter, backs to the curtain with him, and does this incredible one-man shot. Right, like it goes all the way to the
while
curtain.
Megan's still talking.
While Megan's still talking the entire time. Like if we want to try that, we will, and that's no problem. We write it into the show. We give it a shot, and if we fail, we fail, and if we nail it, we nail it. And if as we grow and try different things, we will, and find different ways. Like one of the things I'd really love to do too is have a position set backstage for special people. Like, for example, like say like this past show, Jordan Dowdy was sitting in instead of Adam Sella. But I'd still like to have a backstage spot where how Dean Thomas pops in. I want that where we can have a specialist walk up and I can quickly type their name into the key system and be like, all right, here's this person about to talk. And it's like, and then has a little picture and whatever talking. Hey, what do they need to do in the second round? Here's such and such. Oh, well, they need this. They can, lock this up and score some points here. It might be a real close decision, or whatever.
That's such a dope little addition.
Yeah, it's little things that people don't realize though, like the small stuff. You know what I mean? It's the people don't realize interviews and things were hard back when we first started. Like we didn't just have cameras everywhere to be able to just do interviews and wireless mics that we could reach and all that.
Well, that's the other thing too. I want to say is like it's an immense investment, dude. I know what this has cost me. I can only imagine what a production crew like, paying the labor, getting the hardware, setting up. I'm sure this is a monumental task, both financially and logistically.
It's a lot of work. I mean, if I have uninterrupted with all of us working, we can have the, broadcast desk. I could probably have it set up in maybe 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours. That's
for
like
NFA as it is
for
now?
NFA as it is now. Yeah, like where it would be like, but Matt Sawicki sets up his audio stuff and Frazier sets up his piece and I set up my piece, but I interconnect all of it together and make sure everything's working typically, and then start running the snake out, for the video and audio, or me and Sawicki run both the snakes out.
Just for like context, if you had to do it alone, just you,
yeah, I wouldn't.
how hard would that setup
I wouldn't.
be? It's in no way.
Nah.
Fuck it, not
at 41. at 28-year-old me, 32-year-old me, yeah, let's get it. No, if I all of my knowledge and if I just was left alone and there's no obstacles and I had no questions or anything and I can just set up, I could hook up everything that those guys hook up and everything. I could probably have it done in like 4 to 5 hours and have it running.
With you as now, with your knowledge and skill set today.
Correct. Yeah, today. Like it would take me 4 to 5 hours to set up all of that stuff, make sure it's all good. And then on top of that, like all those guys are doing jobs like, for example, like Sawicki is sound checking all the microphones. Like there's 4 wireless mics that we have just, for certain different things. And then we've got, Frazier does the night before. Frazier does so much that people don't even realize.
Really?
Oh, man. So he gets all the photos from the weigh-ins the night before, and by that next morning has all of the backgrounds cut out, all of them formatted a certain way and put into a folder so that all of this system can work so that they can look amazing on the big screen and all that,
I didn't know that.
So, yeah, it takes a ton of work in vMix to make these shows, like the graphics and everything. Like used to, before I came along, every fight they did, they had to make everything individually, every graphic, every heads-up thing. It was wild. They were making a lot of stuff, and I was luckily able to show them some ways to shortcut some of that.
Meaning they were reinventing the wheel every time?
Yeah, so all right, they make a fight card, right? And we know in the fight game especially, cards are subject to change.
Sometimes even the day of.
Subject to change, yeah, all the way up to the day of, right? So now you've been to the show, so you've seen every fight we have always shows the face-off screen, always has their stats, always has that info, right? For every fight they would have to make a graphic for each one of those.
Static.
All of it. So because there wasn't no other way to do it at first, and then vMix has a system in it to where you can do some dynamic linking and be able to swap some things in and out, and we were able to like lighten that load, but still it's a ton of work the night before. So if we have 15 fights, he's got to do 30 pictures of getting rid of their backgrounds, making them look good for production level quality stuff, not, looking rough around the edges.
That big screen, man.
Yeah, it's not forgiving when it's, how big is that screen?
Dude, it's almost the size of like a tennis court, I feel.
Yeah, it's huge. Insane. And so like, whenever graphics are that big, there's no room for little errors and jitteriness and all that. We'll see it for sure.
Let's actually take like piggyback off that one, because you were talking about NFA as like eras, meaning like there was like the Arnold Hall Farmington era, then there was the Bar Park Village era, and then the Armory era. Let's talk about that. So Farmington, Arnold Hall, when you're getting in, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking, all right, how do I make the most out of what I'm dealt? Because I can't change a lot of things that I would like to change. Like, for example, Arnold Eagles has kind of a low ceiling. We know it's just nothing you can do about that, right? There's nothing I can do to raise a ceiling. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, okay, well, then let's talk about like how do we maybe have some of these overhead lights maybe not on around the crowd area in certain times, or can we bank them differently so that we can use them, or do we need to cover some up somehow, or just looking at what we've got and making the most of it. That's what you have to do in the beginning. That's all you can do in the beginning, because if you wait for perfection, you'll never get where you're going.
I like that. I think they say something, there's like a saying that says like, don't let perfect inhibit good, right? Like,
exactly.
Don't wait for something to be perfect. You can just have something be good for right now.
Yeah, people out there are always like, oh man, how much does it take to get started? And it's like, do you have a cell phone in your pocket? Yeah, well then you can start right now, because it's got a pretty good camera on it already.
Yeah,
you know?
That's fair. Now, Farmington was a bigger venue. What was that like working with? Going from the Arnold Hall, I prefer the term intimate, than to Farmington, which is a lot more. I mean, it was basically like a sports hall, right? Like, I mean,
it felt like an arena.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It was like, I mean, for those who haven't been to Farmington, I mean, what is it, like 3 or 4 tennis courts wide? Or, I mean, not tennis, but basketball courts wide.
You're not limited by the venue, let's put it that way.
Yeah, we have more space than we can deal with. Basically, at that time, I wouldn't have necessarily had this knowledge. Now, if you sent me there and we had to, because that's still just a massive room and it's hard to deal with. I mean, you just have to kind of like darken that arena some. That's just too big. You know what I mean? Like, otherwise it's going to look like 10 people inside a giant room. You know what I mean? It was fun though. So that was still getting my feet wet though, where I was coming down more being a part of whatever they already currently have going. I'm not really injecting much of my ideas yet. You know what I mean? I'm more like,
you're just worried about operating.
I want to make sure that because they've lost their consistent camera team who's always there. I'm trying to make sure that I'm at least upholding the bar that's already been set so that we can grow from there instead of get back to that.
Why did they lose the camera team, if you don't mind asking?
I have no idea.
Oh, that has nothing to do with
nothing to do with me at all.
It
was
just so happened.
Whenever we had negotiated after the NFA 6, I was going to come in and actually just supplement the camera team that was already in place, like add in some stuff, and we had a wireless system so we could have Jason run around with the wireless and just a couple more cameramen and more try to bring this production level up some, you know what I mean? But then by the next one, for whatever the situation was, I'm not sure, but we were the only ones there, so we just kind of status quo'd it. You know what I mean? Just did, all right, well, let's fill the void of whatever's missing, make sure we got all of our spots covered, and then we'll see what you guys do for this show, and then kind of build off of that. You know?
Is this a good point to bring in Media Outlaws? I mean, this is a business you run, correct?
Yeah, that's my day-to-day business. So for those that don't know, my production's called Media Outlaws. We do video production and live broadcast.
So like when they lose the cameraman, I mean, you're like in a prime spot with resources and development. I mean, you know the guys, you can easily bring them in.
Yeah.
You kind of were, I hate to say it like this way because it doesn't really add a whole lot of nuance, but the right guy at the right time at the right place.
Yeah, it was all right place, right time, especially, you know, and so I was really lucky that Brad and Marlene were able to let me kind of, like I said, take some creative control of Frazier and let us kind of build the show in what we see could be, you know, a vision.
I have 2 kind of harder questions, and forgive me, but this is the only way I know how to ask them. Number one, I mean, do you not see it? Did you not see it as an opportunity to, like, you know, the camera team fell off and you're like, hey, I went from being the guy that was like supplemental to this to where like now I can get this baton and I can run with it.
Oh, absolutely.
You saw it as an opportunity.
Yeah. I was in no way wanting the current camera team to be not there. That wasn't like any, because especially, but if they're not, I mean, look, if you think that leaving and thinking the camera team that was coming, like me, coming in to help can't pick up the pieces and figure it out, I don't think that was ever what anyone thought. You know, we can definitely pick up the pieces and make sure something happens that will be at least viewable piece of entertainment, right? Like, so once they were out, it was just more of a, okay, well, then let's start getting creative and help build the show out. Now that we are filling in the pieces, we can say how we would do things a little bit, as opposed to we need to come in and figure out what they're doing so that we can mold in and add to You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely,
Like
because
it's because like with them, it would be we'd be following their role.
now it's your ship.
Now
like
it's
you were
our
saying.
ship. Yeah, like in the beginning, it was kind of whoever's sitting behind the computer's ship.
Did that change the paradigm of like how much you wanted to put yourself into this? Because this is why I bring this up. Let's say you're just a cameraman.
Mm-hmm.
How much input do you really have? So like, how much do you really have like a say? And then if you don't have so much of a say, you're kind of quiet, and you could be the guy who is quote unquote the smartest in the room or has like the most benefit to add to the production or the situation or the product.
Sure.
But you might not necessarily feel like apt to speak up because you're just camera 3, right?
Right. And I mean, and that was what I would have been, but also remember they having consults on vMix and stuff too. So I was already helping them with the broadcast software and
Fair.
in other areas. So, things that Fraser had a list of things that he wanted to figure out how to achieve already. So when I came in, he brought those up. You know what I mean? And so then I brought my things up once it was a position for me to start piping up more, you know what I mean? And so me and him really just took off building it. And Brad and Marlene are creative too. They come up with stuff they want to do. It's not just solely me and Fraser. It's not, we're open to like with the people who work with us. If there's something they want to do, they can come to us and ask us about doing it,
So that's the next question I want to ask is like, I feel like as the shows, like as you do more shows with the same people, like the same crew, you kind of get this like homogenous soup where it's like, you kind of know what someone's going to do because you've worked with them on 8 other shows before that, right? Or
Right.
not what they're going to do, but you're going to have an idea. But Matt was running this show when you got in as a consultant, and now you're kind of like the head lead guy. But Matt is very much, I mean, I've heard you say you've spoken his praises when he is around and when he's not around. So how does, I want to be careful how I ask this. You kind of took ownership of this. But Matt seems to be right there with you, lock and step.
Oh, 1,000%.
And you guys seem to work phenomenally well together.
Yeah, I mean, look, the only one person can drive.
Yeah.
You can't have 2 people trying to operate the driver part of it. Now, we write the show together. So like the run of show and stuff, he's usually writes the majority of it and we fill in the spaces together. Like he's the one that is handling most of that stuff. And then, he says, okay, here's the few things that we've got. How do you want to fit this in? Or we'll come up with things together to do like the Kind Goods championship belt thing. Like me and him came up with that where it was like, hey, we know they want to come in and announce their thing, but like let's try to make it a little more, you know what I mean, and add a little pageantry to it.
To give some context to that, Kind Goods is the premier sponsor of NFA right now. And they had won some award for best dispensary.
Yeah, 3 years in a row.
And simultaneously, this was the third. Correct me if I'm wrong. The third show at NFA that they were the main premier sponsor.
I believe
for.
That's correct. Yeah.
So it was like 3 for 3
yeah.
times 2.
Yeah. It was like hitting slots.
So you guys actually had the idea of creating a championship belt similar to what the amateur and the professional champions get, but making it green and also adding because it's like a parent company and then the brands. Adding the brands to that. And I'll tell you right now, that is probably the first time I've ever seen a sponsor of a show get like a sponsored catered belt. And I thought it was a genius idea.
I appreciate that. I mean, it was a team effort of coming up with it. Like, some of the design was me and Marlene, and then, the idea itself was me and Fraser. And then, of course, Brad was like, hey, what if we try this? Or, I can wrap it around them, or we can do this. We've talked about different ideas and how we could do it. And, like, the whole fun part of it is like making it like you said earlier, a show. Like, because at the end of the day, the fights are what is always going to be consistent there. We always have to have fights, but like we can have fun and make it look good and have a little like having Zeus walk out with Ray Hayes at NFA 16.
That was so dope.
Doing stuff like that and like can you
describe that? It was
yeah.
You say Zeus. Forgive me.
So for those who don't know, Zeus Rebel Waters, he's a local rapper here, and he does a lot of different things. Definitely go follow him on Instagram or whatever and say it. But he did a walkout song with Ray Hayes for his I think that was his professional debut in our
was
league,
it
right?
That was like 2 shows ago. Was that his debut?
Only his debut with us in a pro fight.
Forgive me.
Yeah.
Okay,
No, he's fought 3 times pro, but I think it was the first time he fought for us as a pro.
Forgive me. Okay.
So when he came out though, we got to hook that up, and so when he walked out, there's a great shot. Jason on the wireless cam just happened to eyeball this shot where he was Ray's getting checked and Vaselined up at the checkpoint. Zeus is on the stage rapping, and Jason just slides right in, so he's getting done up, and Zeus is right over his shoulder, wrapping him out. I was like, chef's kiss, Jason on the comms. By the way, you guys don't even get to know, like, I'm talking crazy during these fights. Like, we're watching these things, I'm just as much of a fan. So, I'm saying, okay, get ready, camera 3, go camera 3. Yeah, I'm doing that. But then I'm seeing what's happening, and I'm like,
you're bumping.
He's got the leg. All he's got to do is put the hips on the other side, and it's in there. And
And you're so camera 3 or 4?
Yeah, so, camera 2, get ready. He's about to switch his hips. I see him trying,
That's actually, but that brings it full circle to the production value. It's like if you have someone who's knowledgeable about the sport, you can kind of like pinpoint what's going to happen when, and like really choose the correct camera for that angle and for that specific interaction.
It definitely helps.
Yeah.
It definitely helps. So I did Cardinals. I was a cameraman for the Cardinals once, and I was in the dugout for the away team, and I'm on the headset. And the thing that I noticed the most was this dude who is doing all the directing and everything. Not only is he a good director, but he knows this sport in and out. He knows everything happening, can predict what's about to happen. He can see what the teams are doing. And I really grasped that whenever I was around the Cardinals doing stuff. Like, you got to know a lot about what you're seeing so that you can tell these guys what's happening. Because these cameramen, they might know about it too, but you see all the cameras. They're only seeing one angle of what's happening. They can't see that guy doing his wrist on the other side. If Lincoln's on the perch and the pole's looking down at it, they see one of them sees the wrist work, the other one doesn't, so it's, it's hard to predict even still what's going to happen.
And that's a specific thing to bring up because I've seen your monitor. First of all, you have like a TV for a monitor.
Yeah.
And I mean, it has every single camera. So you're seeing everything. Like other people can be seeing what's currently like on the pay-per-view, quote unquote, but you're seeing everything, even if it's not necessarily like on, front stage right or something like that. Like you can see camera 1, 2, 3, 4, however many cameras you have. You see all the audio, you see everything, and like, okay, like based on this, we're gonna go switch to camera 2. You can kind of direct people. It was very impressive when I saw it at first because like I don't think talking about it does it justice. But when you see it, honestly, not even the photos do it justice. Because you guys take photos, and it looks cool. Like, it looks cool.
Yeah, no one's operating at that time when we're doing that, though. Yeah, it's
not
like,
the stress.
if you could see a clip of it in the moment, it's a lot different. It's a lot,
I asked the 2 hard questions, but then I wanted to transition to this one because it's kind of like piggybacking off both. So, we've talked about the limitations of, like, venues. We've talked about the limitations of, like, this transitionary period where you came on as a consultant. You were helping with VMix originally, being just a cameraman, and then, the previous staff kind of fell through, left a void. You guys kind of filled it up. And you're also going through these venue shifts, right? So you were at the Arnold Hall, then there was Farmington. Then we enter the Ballpark Village era, quote unquote, the saga.
Yeah. Well, we did Olympia for a minute.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we did Olympia twice.
Oh, forgive me.
And then what was cool about Olympia, too, was that was the first time I brought in a band that I knew to be like, so a trick I pulled from pro wrestling, especially WWE, will have like Royal Rumble, the official theme song with saliva, click, click, boom, or some horrible track, right? And I was like, well, we might as well like do some cool stuff like that. Let's get some bands involved. They can come to the show, go Instagram Live, have a great time, and be fun. And then maybe we have some crossover because we have similar people who like our stuff, right? So maybe they'll bring us some new people. Maybe we'll bring them some new people. So with Inimical Drive, I took one of their songs, music video, and then cut it up with fight footage and turned that into the promo. And then they came in and did all the behind the scenes stuff like I was talking about with Instagram and everything and had a great time. And that was the first time we did anything like that. And so
we need to do something with that.
We need to bring that back. Yeah. So if you're a band out there, feel free to reach out to your boy here.
I had Zach Mosier on, and fun fact, I didn't know we went to high school together until an hour and 15 minutes into the conversation. But
he's a good dude.
He's a very good dude. But I know for a fact that those guys would be down for something like that again.
I need to hit up Joel again. We had kind of talked about it a little bit before this last NFA, talking in future, but you know how it is once fight week
Here's
comes.
the other thing, right? Because like this is where I put my hat on, and I say business is all about interactions and networking and like collaboration and relationships. So like Inimical Drive comes in to do something with NFA.
Yep.
But then they make, FaceTime with the Armory crowd. And then how long until they're doing something at the Armory completely separate from NFA?
Hopefully, right? I mean, hopefully the whole thing is that we make like relationships for everybody. Like the whole thing is for everyone to win. Whenever we do anything with anyone, my whole goal, whenever I'm trying to work with anybody on collaborative things, is everyone wins. Yeah. Otherwise, what's the point? It's not collaborative if one person wins.
It's business in general. So we're going through these transitions of venues, and I understand that, like, you know, for an emerging promotion, it's very tough. Like I think a lot of times Shamrock FC, at least locally, is held to this like standard because they're so consistent with a lot of their things. But they also have these like multi-year deals with the casinos and all this stuff. And I think that that's probably like one of the things that, if all goes according to plan, NFA will have next is like this multi-year or at least, you know, annual deal where like multiple shows can be done a year. But you're leaving Olympia and moving to Ballpark Village, which, I mean, I think venues like logistically have challenges, but Ballpark Village has also the challenge of like being a highly trafficked place.
Yeah.
So talk about that. First of all, how'd you guys get it? And then talk about going from, you know, Arnold Hall, Farmington, Olympia, now BPV.
Yeah, so Brad and Marlene worked that one out and surprised us with that one, that we were going to Ballpark Village.
How'd they bring it out to you guys? Hey, by the way.
Yeah, it was like, hey, by the way. Well, we kind of knew a little something leading up to, like, hey, there's a shot we might get to do this. We, you know, but don't get too much hopes up because who knows, you know.
Have to negotiate.
Well, and are the Cardinals even going to allow fighting in an arena that is with their name on a marquee? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's fair. A lot there's a lot of reasons this could not happen. It's kind of how it felt whenever we first kind of got the word that we might do Ballpark Village, right? So, and when we got it, it was fun. I mean, look, out the back of our red carpet show was literally Busch Stadium. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, there were certain things that the strips, like what Busch Stadium has on the inside, like, you know, using those in there too, and like having fighters' names up on that, and like that's where it was like. So Olympia kind of gave me the first time. I've told you this before. It felt like an underground movie scene almost for the fight. Ballpark Village felt like the first time. Now we're about to potentially look on the level. Like, this could be broadcast professionally on a television station by somebody.
When you say the level, you mean like what? Like UFC, PFL, 1FC? Or like what level is your level?
Getting to the level. Like, we're now in like the early Bellator days level. We're in the early UFC days level where this is a really good product. We're in like the 2010s era of UFC, maybe, you know, like they
which
got
for the local show is amazing.
Yeah, no, that means like, you know, we're finally catching up to things that I see that I'm like, man, I'd really like to get to this level, because then my goal is I want this to be as watchable by anyone as possible. Anyone can get a hardcore fan to watch a sport. It's whenever you can get the casual fan to care about regional and local fighting, that's whenever you're hitting. You know what I mean? That to me. Because then it's like your fights are good enough. The booking, like Lance does a great job booking, so we always have awesome fights.
Lance the Clue, the matchmaker.
Correct. And so, you know, we have the entertainment value. We just need the production value to go with the entertainment value. And so, like, as we do that, now the more casual fan is going to enjoy the show because it's more just autopilot for them.
Before I get to BBV, because you're bringing it up, does the card ever intimidate you? Like, let's say, you know, you have like banger after banger after banger of a fight. Mm-hmm. Do you ever feel like, oh my God, we got to step our game up for this one because these guys are going to come out and show out? Or to you, is it like, we just need to make sure we're 5% better than next time or 10% better than next time?
My big thing is, as long as we maintain a bar we set, we can try new stuff and it can go right or wrong, and that's okay. But as long as our show maintains the professional bar we've set for ourselves, then all is well. You know, it's really like more in the show in the moment is what's going to make or break a good show. Like, it's the fight card is always excited for the fight card. I get anxious. I'm ready to see it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of fighters I, of course, love to see on the card. And so, you know, I do get excited about them coming out, and I'm always looking, but it's about making them look amazing. Like, they're about to come out and put this show on, And I want this to be a memorable moment in time that people 5-10 years from now will be able to watch back and just be like, man, they were on it then. They were really watching this, and it's still quality.
I'll tell you who's going to appreciate it the most. It'll be the fighters.
I hope so, because
I look back at fights from my pro debut 6 years ago, and I'm like, man. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it will be watched for a lot longer than that one night.
Correct. It's forever now. This is a piece of forever. And because, like, imagine, okay, you have kids. So imagine your kid grows up. They're going to find out once they're an adult, they're going to want to go YouTube your fight. Is that going to be a quality level of something that will hold their attention when that time comes?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what I'm hoping for. Is I want to make if you're going to make me a timeless classic fight with your opponent, I'm going to make you a timeless piece of production that goes with it.
God bless. I never looked at it like that until after I said it, but yeah, you're absolutely right, because I mean I have fights from like my amateur days, Matt, which are like on YouTube from like someone's cell phone.
Sure.
Literally
a potato.
And by the way, God bless whoever posted that on YouTube.
Right.
Because like the production at that time was like a live event. There were no, or you would be lucky to have a photographer, right?
Sure.
So like after the fights, I remember all the fighters, and this is like aging myself a little bit, but I'm talking about like 2014, right? I would go fight at like the Heart of St. Charles. This was my like third or fourth amateur fight, and there was no video whatsoever.
Right.
Lighting consisted of like stage lighting to like illuminate the cage.
Yeah, like construction lights.
Yes, construction lighting. You're not wrong. And like we were just happy to have like an MMA cage on like a fence that you would have in your backyard.
and it to be covered. Like
yes.
the actual have
so
a canvas
scratch
cover.
Your back
right,
shit,
right.
Yes.
Oh yeah, the other part it's coated.
Oh yeah. So I mean to think about how much has changed in such a short amount of time. And, you know, I bag on the promotions a lot about fighter pay and all these other things. But one of the things I will give them credit for, and I'll give NFA their comeuppance on this one, your production for NFA is the best I have seen locally.
Well, thanks, man.
And it's not even a close second.
I appreciate that.
So I know Finney and Rob will feel some type of way about that. But I also, in my heart of hearts, I'm a capitalist and I love competition, and to have someone coming in and like NFA is competing on like the fighter level, but then to have you and Richard competing on the production level,
sure,
good, fucking good.
No, it's
fighters are competing.
It's exciting.
Let the promotions and the production compete.
Well, it's
too.
exciting. And well, another thing too is I don't even know Richard, but I bet me and him would get along
you guys
great.
Would vibe.
You know what I mean? We would totally be nerds about everything because everyone thinks that every promotion hates each other and all this stuff, and sure, I'm sure there's some animosity between certain promotions.
I think promoters.
Better way to say it, promoters. Yeah. But I'm not the promoter of NFA. Yeah. I am the production guy, a third-party company who does it. Now, I fly the NFA flag for sure. Those are my people. You know what I mean? That's a product I care very deeply about. I've put a lot of time into, and me and Frazier and Brad and Marlene and the whole crew, all of us have worked very hard to make it what it is now. You know, a lot of... Is
it still a job just to you? Or at this point, is it more?
What's that?
NFA.
A job? Oh, I care a lot about it. Yeah, no, it's
passion project.
Like I'll work for... I mean, I'm a production company. If you call me and you want a job done, I'm a production company. Call me and ask me for sure. But like at the end of the day, like I'm more than a production guy to NFA. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm just like NFA is not just a client to me. Those are my people. They're we all have the same goal, which is to put on a spectacle of a show to make these amateurs and pros look.
How did it get to that point though? Why did this company? Why did this production? Why did this product become more? I mean, I'm sure you have. I know for a fact that you have other clients that put you on retainer.
Sure.
And I'm sure you have relationships with them as well. You
Absolutely.
Know what I mean? But why did this specific instance with this specific promoter or this industry grab you like this?
I only consistently work with people that I gel with like this. Because if you don't want to grow, you're good with stagnant, you're good with just the status quo of what you've got, I'm not the guy for you. Because even me and Frazier are always like, all right, what are the little things we can change? That you will never know some of the little things we change but it's little things that are experienced pieces, right? All the way up to big things that will change though eventually. You know, we love the idea of, all right, we're here, we know the level's achievable here, how do we get there? And that's always going to be a consistent thing. You know what I mean? So
Only if the promoter wants it to be.
well, not whenever the promoter hands you the keys to the creative side to let a person who
God
has
bless.
the right, and that's why
I
Brad
would make the
Marlene
argument that
and-
the promoter does want it to be, right? If he's giving
Right.
you the keys, he's
Absolutely.
like, fuck it, run wild, boys.
Let them. We're not going to do anything to embarrass anybody.
Stupid.
We know. Yeah. We're lucky to have the position to get to be creative and have it on this platform and do it like this. So we're going to do the best we can to make it win for everybody that's letting us do this. You know what I'm saying? So.
I want to kind of take a step back. Forgive me if you don't mind. I just want to look at the venue that is Ballpark Village before we get to the current day NFA, because that seems like, to me personally from the outside, a nightmare of a production like hurdle. Just because, so whenever I look at like venues and stuff like that, I never really thought of it as production. I always thought of it from the business aspect, right? So like, by the way, a lot of these things I'm about to say about PPV, I would also say about the Armory, right? And when we get to that topic.
There's lots of things, yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that is conducive to like a Shamrock FC show is the inability for like cross traffic. So like it makes it easy to sell tickets because you're an isolated thing. Like there's the casino, yeah, you can go to the casino, you can go to the restaurants, but above the escalators, you can go to this Shamrock FC fighting event, and it's like there's no cross homogenation,
Right.
which there's cons to that as well. But the pros to that is you know that everybody in that building at that specific time was there for fights. Now, one of the things that I would say for NFA during those BPV days was like, how did you guys limit? Because you have Ballpark Village, the venue, but then you have like a bunch of different bars and a bunch of different restaurants. You know, do they have to close?
They had to lock their doors to the outside,
To the outside,
to the
inside.
yeah, because so so whenever you do an MMA event, you have to get the state involved, and every person who comes to the door has to pay the state too, obviously out of that ticket sale.
That's actually a question I have for you later. I don't know if that's true.
Oh, interesting.
Because
I mean, that's how I've always understood
What
it.
if they're not buying a ticket to watch a MMA? What if they're just buying? What if they're paying cover to just get into a building, and it just so happens that MMA is being done there?
Yeah, but I mean, how do you distinct between the two without having? I mean, if the event is happening in the room,
You still sell tickets for seats,
sure.
and that's how you distinguish.
No, I imagine there are plenty of loopholes that could be challenged on some of that for sure.
Sorry, Tim. I love you, brother. but
Yeah. I mean,
I'm a big
we're
fan
also
of not
business
paying
people.
taxes.
Yeah, we're also big fans of making our
Tim's gonna
margins
be like,
bigger. Yeah.
shut up.
Yeah, hey, look, the margins aren't huge to begin with in
dude.
pro fighting and amateur fighting. So
Talk about that. I mean, you guys have a budget to do production. I mean, I don't know if I don't mean this as a detriment. So I've talked to many. I don't want to say their names. Let's just say that there are a lot of local promotions from like kickboxing, MMA, what have you, boxing. I've never heard any single one of them say that they've left with more than $10,000 at the end of the night. Meaning like profits, like after everybody gets paid,
Sure.
after the venue and all these other things, like $10,000 that they bring home. So it should be stated that these promoters, at least locally, they're not making a huge killing either.
No. I don't know what NFA makes after a fight. I'm not even an employee of NFA technically. I'm a contractor, right? So that would be way out of
Your ballpark.
of my range of things that I deal with for them especially. But no, I know what we get done for the budget we have for production, which I'm not gonna just go into our production budget or anything, but just know for the dollar amount we have, we get a lot done, and that's how it looks the way it does.
So then how is it difficult? Like how was BPV in that respect? I mean, you have a lot to work with, but you have a lot of hurdles.
You know what was great about BPV was the balcony was so close to the cage, and it just made you feel like you could just fall right over into it if you went over the cage, which also made a great spot for a cameraman. So it had we always had this aerial view looking down that I loved to be able to go to, especially whenever the guys go to the ground and there's no good angle from the front of the sides to show what's going on. So that aerial view would show you kind of a top-down view, so you kind of get a good. I missed that about Ballpark Village especially. That was like one of my favorite.
Is it not able to be done at the Armory?
Yeah, because the balcony's just so far away. I mean, literally, we're talking a difference of like 30, 40 feet.
What if you do like something like the NFL does? And by the way, if I'm in over my head, tell me, Aaron, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Sure, no.
I know that the NFL, for instance, they have like those aerial views. But
Zip lines.
Yes.
They're so awesome, but they're so expensive.
Yeah,
and then on top of that, it takes 1 to 2 guys to operate it.
Nah.
So
it can be done.
it absolutely.
But now
and look, if we were ever going to get to pull it off in an arena, Ballpark Village or Armory would be amazing for it. It would be so incredible to be able to do that, because the shots we would get off of that would be outrageous. Believe me, we've talked about it. We've been like, so how much are those, and what's the type of setup we can put on that thing, and believe me, if it can be done and I can figure out the budget for it, you'll see a zip line cam
how
eventually.
often do you guys meet to discuss production? Like, and when you meet, is it with like NFA, or is it just like the production guys? Like, what goes into, like, okay, so you have the next show November 1st.
Yeah.
At the time of this recording, it is what, the 20th, correct?
Yeah, August 20th.
The 20th of
right?
August,
Yeah.
2024.
So we got roughly
like,
2 months.
yeah, so like, okay, when are you guys going to sit down to discuss November 1st? And then who's in that meeting? How long is it?
I mean, so we just had the fight this past weekend, so we'll do probably a post-mortem meeting in
Of the previous event.
and then talk November 1st.
Got you.
But we've been working on November 1st for time already.
Well, you guys
know
already
what I
have the graphics and everything.
Yeah, we got to, and stuff we do too. Like, we update graphics and all that every show, making it look better and different things. And, Daybreak Breaking the Action was new a couple fights ago with the split screen for that in between rounds and different fun stuff like that, that we're always working on. But, I mean, really, usually 8-ish weeks out, 6 to 8 weeks out, me and Frazier are starting to meet like once a week for a couple hours at least to start building the show out in VMix and making sure everything functions, and start looking at like if and when and what collaborations we're going to do for the show, what are they and how do they work, and how do we want to basically execute them, and how do they fit into the show too, so that it doesn't feel like something totally disjointed that doesn't make sense in an MMA show.
Yeah.
Definitely lots of things that come up that people want to do at an MMA show that it's like,
Why?
Yeah. So, no, but, yeah, about 6-8 weeks out, we'll probably start. I mean, usually as soon as we know we got it booked for real, we start on it. So
Let me ask the question in a different way. I mean, you guys have gone through, and this is not like an insult, but it's kind of like an objective view. You guys have gone through a lot of venues in a short amount of time, which is also conducive to a up and coming promotion, right? It's like,
Sure.
you guys are just figuring things out, and where you were at 4 years ago versus 2 years ago versus today is like light years difference, right?
totally, right.
So, when you're discussing these plans for the next show and all that, I mean, obviously the venue has to be taken into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
How many shows did you have at BPV? Like 3 or 4?
4, I think.
4?
Yeah.
So it's like, you're kind of getting into the groove of things at PBV.
Yep.
You did the first show. By the time you get to the 3rd or 4th show, you got a lot of like kinks out of the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much does that kind of, I don't want to say the word like, hindrance or whatever, but what is that whiplash like when you go from BPV to the Armory? Now, both are great venues, but completely different venues.
Totally.
Right?
I mean, so the thing about whenever you're a guy who does what I do for a living, you actually normally don't have the convenience of going to the same venue over and over again. So like, my normal like clients and stuff, I'm normally going ahead of time to to different venues and places that we're going to be doing productions and scoping them out early and figuring it out. It's part of the job.
Like
ahead
the
of time.
hurdles, the opportunities.
Yeah, just what's our shortcomings? What's the things that maybe I need to? Do we need rentals for something special that we wouldn't normally, and make sure that's in the budget to go out so that we know we have these things, and otherwise it could put us dead in the water.
An estimate. Hey, this is what this show is going to cost.
It's what it's going to take. Yeah. Hey, look,
And
so
you don't do just MMA. You do live music. You do.
Yeah. We did drone. We've done drone racing. We've done all kinds of stuff. I mean, lots of live action stuff.
Even
especially
politics. You guys did like a town hall.
Did town hall, done some of that. I mean, like, we've broadcast a lot of different stuff. So, and
Someone's got budget.
Yeah, you got a budget, you got a show you need. Yeah, exactly. And brought to you by Media Outlaws.
Dude, listen, we'll plug everything. Don't worry. I'm a big fan of your guys. Well, not your guys. I'm a big fan of you individually.
I appreciate that.
And then all the people under your crew, trust me, because to bring it back full circle, Matt working on the audio, you helping with the little list of things that we need, Frazier helping out with production. I would not be able to do this without the people without Media Outlaws.
Without my squad too, I wouldn't be able where I'm at all. It wouldn't be doable. I mean, look, Lincoln Nelson and Jesse Hyrant and Jason Coleman and Frazier and me and Sawicki, like all of us, we work hard together on a lot of different projects, and we all have been putting in time together too. Like part of that is that we're a bunch of friends that like working together.
That's awesome.
Like other people can bring in, so like for example, sometimes Lincoln will bring in something where he's the head guy and I'm just a cameraman, and that's totally fine. You know what I mean?
Meaning like things that the company is working on where he's leading the show. And
Absolutely, yeah. He just brings me into something he's got going on because he's got clients and stuff too. So like, I'm not always the head guy. Sometimes I'm just the camera guy, or
You're kind of undershadowing that though, because that proves that you have like this humble quality. I think that you need to have an ego in order to run anything. In order to run anything, you have to have an ego to be like, I want this to be a good product.
I don't think it's an ego though. I think you have to have confidence in yourself that you can get that product. It isn't about an ego necessarily.
Ego has a negative connotation, but there's also like a dictionary definition to ego. Mm-hmm. And forgive me, right off the top of my mind, it escapes me, but ego is not necessarily a negative thing.
Okay.
Ego is like, will you do me a favor, Adrian? Google that for me, because ego is the inner self or something to that extent, but it's like you have to have some. Now, ego is oftentimes like negatively correlated with this.
Well, sure, yeah, that guy's so egotistical.
Yes, ego's too large.
Sure.
So I'm not saying that.
The dictionary definition is a very psychoanalysis related, correct? So the part of the mind that mediates between the conscious and the unconscious and is responsible for reality testing and a sense of personal identity. The philosophical view of it is a conscious thinking subject is your ego.
Beautiful. The reason, and thank you so much for bringing that up, like, because I knew I didn't know like the Webster's dictionary definition, but I knew that ego was like essentially, it can also be correlated to like how much you care about a topic, right? Yeah. So like, for instance, if you talk to me about golf, I have no ego towards golf because I don't know anything about golf. But if you talk to me about fighting, I have an immense ego towards that because that is my subconscious and conscious correlating together for the reality of what I've experienced. So when I say ego, it's like you can check your ego. It's actually a compliment because a lot of people don't know how to. I know a lot of people that like they're successful in one thing or they might be very knowledgeable about one topic and they think that this somehow correlates to everything else they do in their life.
Sure.
And a lot of times that's what we correlate to egotistical. Like, brother, just because you know something or you make a lot of money doesn't necessarily mean you know anything about production, right?
Sure.
So like, but for instance, you do know about production. Yeah. And you're still allowing yourself to be like, hey, this is your thing. This is your prize. This is the thing that you're bringing to this table. And I am checking my ego to step back and be the support, not necessarily the captain.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of said it like nonchalantly, but I just want to say that's a fucking skill set. And I know very few people that can do that. So I know leaders and I know entrepreneurs and I know employees, but I very rarely meet entrepreneurs that can be employees interchangeably. That's a skill set, brother.
Sure. No, I mean, look, any good production is really about energy and what everyone's attitude is toward what's happening. And so, like, whenever I'm directing or running a show, I'm trying to keep the energy good and make everybody have a good time, right? So whenever I go back to being just a cameraman or anything like that, I also just in the back of my mind remember, like, look, just try to, like, what that dude's dealing with running the show. So just try to also be open-minded as you see these things happening and, like, try to keep that vibe good because you know how much better the show goes if you keep everybody happy and laughing. You know what I mean?
What's more stressful, being the guy that people rely on or being the guy that leads the ship?
The guy that leads the ship or the guy that people rely on? I mean, usually that's the same person, so.
Good answer. Let me rephrase it then. Being the cameraman or being the conductor?
Oh, it's way more pressure being the conductor.
Yeah.
Yeah. The cameraman, now look, don't get me wrong, whenever I did like Cardinals or, I did NHL Network stuff, whenever we were on the Stanley Cup run and all that, it's definitely a lot to be like, oh my God, I want my shots to be right. And whenever they call on me, my stuff better be right. But there's a guy in your ear telling you what to do. So it's not like all of a sudden the light comes on and I didn't know it was coming. And, oh, you suck. That's not how it works. My job is to coach them where I want them to be because they don't see everything I see. They just see what they see. So I'm telling somebody usually in a headset, hey, zoom in over here and give me this much of it and then check your focus and then I'm going to come over to you in 2 seconds. All right, here we go. Ready? Oh, good. You got it. 3, 2, 1. All right, it's on you. That's, there's coaching going on. You fought professionally. You weren't out there alone. You had a team, you had a corner. I mean, yeah, you're the only one in the cage throwing the punches, but you have a corner, you have a support system that you can look back at and know they got your back. You know what I mean?
I actually could not disagree more. I think when it comes to this specific thing, and I might get people like that flame me for this one, it was much more stressful being the coach than it was the fighter.
Really?
Yeah, because being the fighter was easy. Like, and by all means, if other fighters disagree, chime in. Every time I've ever had to corner someone, it was an immense, like, because I wasn't in control. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of why I asked you, because, like, as a cameraman, yeah, like, you get told what to do. But as the conductor, you're the one leading the show. You're setting the pace. You're the one, you're saying what's going to be done. So, like, whenever I was fighting, I was in there. Yeah, my corner is screaming their head off and all that. But at the end of the day, I'm the one physically making the actions and the choices. Yeah. So, like, if I win, I win. And if I lose, we lose. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, right? We lose, but I win. Because a good corner, a good coach will always give the credence to the victor, the fighter, the trainer, like the people, the person who trained.
Right.
Where a good coach will also take a percentage of the loss. So, like, as a cornerman, or like whenever I would corner guys, I would always think, if they lose, we lose. I was a part of that loss. I didn't prepare them properly. I didn't, educate them beforehand. I didn't explain the nuance during to an adequate level to achieve the victory. I was a percentage of this loss, whatever percentage that is. Even if it's 1%, I'm a percentage of it. Mm-hmm. However, if they win, they did the coaching. They listened. Right. They did everything. They win 100% of this victory. I was just lucky enough to be the ride. And that's kind of why I asked, because the paradigm, I think, is... I didn't know if it was different, but listening to you say, maybe it is. I always felt like, as a cornerman, I was never in charge, and that's why it was more nerve-wracking. And then as a fighter, because I was leading the ship, because I was steering everything, I was like, cool, like, it's all on me. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but I think it's definitely, I guess it could go either way, but I mean, the most anxiety, the most pressure definitely comes from being the conductor. Being the guy running the boat, because if it sinks, you sunk it.
Yeah, everyone's pointing to you.
You're the guy overall. You know what I mean? So
my caveat is good coaches. Bad coaches will be like, kid, you suck.
Yeah, you're terrible.
You didn't fucking listen to me.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I know everything and you lost.
So duly noted. I'm saying this from the perspective of like how it should be, per my view. Maybe someone differs.
No, like I said, I mean, I feel like I have a skill set of being a director in the moment for NFA shows, sure, but like, again, too, I have a team that knows how to be their positions in that room too. Otherwise, I would be carrying someone along like, hey, nope, not like that. Look, zoom out, follow your focus, look out for this guy. There's a lot of that if you don't have a skilled team.
It's almost like a small symphony when I view it. Instead of playing like bass, guitar, sorry, that's more of a band, but like instead of playing, the drums and then the chords and the strings, it's like, audio, visual, lighting, putting it all together, transitions. Yeah. It's almost
timing.
Like it's almost like a symphony, but more for the visual, less for the auditorial, even though there's an audio aspect to it.
Yeah, I mean, really, I liken it to our production team as the storytellers of what's happening in this arena. Whatever, it doesn't matter if it's scripted or if it's real. The people who are doing the production of it are telling you the story, because they're the ones choosing the camera shots, and the way that those camera shots are set up or how your emotions are invoked. So, there's different ways that different camera shots can look more like Jason does a great job of making fighters look big and ferocious, regardless of size, right? He gets kind of low, and he pulls back on him, and he's in tight whenever the guy's saying their name, and they're doing their face thing, and then he pulls back, but he's low, making them look more ferocious and intimidating, right? So we're framing and making you feel what we want you to feel through the fight by calling the shots we want.
Do you feel more pressure for NFA shows than some of the things you do outside of NFA?
It's a lot of pressure because of how technical it is. Like, I'm the technical director, so there's a lot of pieces and moving over a large distance.
Okay.
So comparatively. So like right now we're in a small room. We can probably have each of these cameras run to a central point with a standard HDMI cable that gets to it, right? So to get those cameras signals back to where I'm sitting, it takes a lot more than just a 25-foot cable. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of places that can of points of I guess basically where if it fails, it's, a point of failure. There's a lot of points of failure. So like, there's like, oh, okay, there's a spot under the cage. Okay, there's a spot over here. There's a spot over there. You got to go check all these things in the moment and be able to like deploy people and tell them what to look for.
Time.
Well, and so I'm the technical director, so I'm telling them, hey, check this under the cage. It's right here. Go over, and then I'm sending another person, go over here, check it on the headset. Hey, go over here, check this, make sure it's plugged in still, make sure someone didn't kick a cable or pull an AC adapter out of the wall by accident or whatever. I mean, because whenever you have a crowd, any kind of crowd, or anything like NFA, especially because like
the human element
is so big part of it, because there's so many people moving to make a thing like NFA move. There's stage manager, there's a stage runner, there's a fight runner who goes and gets me my next fighters, or goes and gets Karen for the interviews, or goes and makes sure that we've got our commentary team up on stage ready to go, and that our sound runner is there with the microphones turned on ready to hand it to them. There's so many moving parts, you know what I mean?
Can you briefly describe to me maybe the worst, because I want to get a context of like the delta, the range between like worst and best, but like what was like the worst show and why? And I don't mean from the perspective of like fights or crowd or anything. I'm talking about production.
You just mean like things, so like people at
From
home probably
your
won't
perspective,
know.
yeah.
Sure. So, I mean, so what the biggest trick of it all is, if I can make it to where you don't know at home that we're having problems, then yeah, it's a hard show and we get through it, but we still did our job the best we could. Let's see. I would say there was a Ballpark Village show that we had a lot of power issues at, where things just kept coming in and out. I don't know if we were on the verge of blowing a circuit or if we just had something faulty, because we never really had the problem again in the same context.
Just a one-off.
But it would be like, imagine just at random, cameras will black out for a second.
I'm losing my shit.
Yeah, oh my. Yeah, no, believe me, I'm like, but luckily, my guys know what to do, and I can tell them over the thing what to do, and they know what I'm saying, so they check it, and we figured out about midway through the show, we finally had it stabilized again, where for the most part, it wasn't happening anymore, but that was a Ballpark Village show you wouldn't know watching back, though. Like, it's not...
You guys maintain
every now and then, if you're watching at home and you are watching one of our broadcasts and you see a screen go black for a second, high chance that some sort of real-time critical something happened, like a cable came loose somewhere. You know what I mean? Doesn't happen very often. We're not pretty quick on things. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to see a blank screen for very long. But when it does, typically it's because everything is down and I have nothing to go to if you see it. You know what I mean? Like, that means
we don't have a
there's far bigger problems than... I'm wondering if we just lost the pay-per-view stream and everything. Like, chances are power's all the way out somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, it's the lights are out for that side of the cage. That's
the other thing, right? Is because there's so many things that don't involve you. Like the venue, the power. Power could be... there's a bad storm outside.
Anything. How much control do you have over your internet connection aside from the equipment you have? Yeah. If Charter goes down and it's nothing to do with you, or if it's AT&T or whoever the provider is, if it goes down and you have to call that provider,
sucks, kid.
We do too. Yeah. Guess what? We do too, and it's not even our account. I'm having to have some person from this has never happened at the Armory. I'm not saying.
Thank God.
but or Ballpark or anywhere, just so everyone knows, we've never had an internet failure, but. I know we've definitely looked at venues and stuff that, we had to pass on because the internet wasn't sufficient too, though. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's always, whenever I go to a venue, I've always, besides like, can it logically hold the cage and the seats and the people and all the stuff? Can it handle production? Can it handle all the power? Can it handle the internet connection for the broadcast?
What do you need? What's like the base specs? Just out of curiosity for myself.
I mean, we just need to make sure that at minimum we could run a 720/60 stream, which is going to be like, you need to have a minimum of 3 or 4 meg up and down.
Oh,
that's
minimum.
It's not even that bad.
Crazy, dude.
Not that bad. Now
I thought you were going to say like 2 or 4K, but 720 is.
Yeah, no, that's a worst case scenario. It'd have to be an amazing reason that we were going there.
Can you handle that with Wi-Fi?
No. See, the problem with Wi-Fi is not that it isn't fast enough to handle what's going on. It's that traditional Wi-Fi can only talk to one device at a time, which causes delays of data to be delivered.
Yeah.
So those little delays add up, though. So it makes things jittery. So, like, if you remember the COVID era of broadcasting and live streaming, how many things did you see? famously Nelly on well, there's
Dancing
that
with the Stars?
Versus. No, it was that
Oh.
they were doing these like versus things where it'd be like two people go head to head with their catalogs and who has the better catalog, who's the better artist, and it would be like two famous people and like Nelly versus Timbaland or something wild. Nelly's episode, he thought he could do it from a studio on Wi-Fi, and it did not work, and so it was just
He got crushed.
jittery and crushed. Yeah, and it'll come to an end eventually as devices change, but unfortunately, they can only talk to one at a time, and that's why it's not.
I've only ever dealt with direct connections. This is actually the first time. So one of the main hurdles of why we don't do anything live is because I have to do Wi-Fi through here,
Right.
unless I pay the building owner to run a direct line.
Sure.
So a lot of people have probed me. They're like, Arion, like, why don't you
Watch parties or
watch or like UFC things, because like one of the things I want to do is I want to install like TVs in this room, and there are things that I also want to do, and you also know the second. So a lot of people don't know this, but we're actually connected to a second room, and that second room is like this is like the start. That second room is gonna be like
the finish.
yeah, dude.
No,
I want
totally.
to do UFC watch parties. I want to do all these things, but there's like a lot of logistical, technical hurdles that I have to overcome. And
Welcome to my world.
yeah, we need to get this to a point where it's sustainable on its own. Then I can start thinking about expansion, because it's like let's handle the bed that we've made, then move from there. But I can. That's why I ask, because like we have Wi-Fi. I can upload, I can download, I can do certain things, and obviously pre-recording and then uploading the video is easy as pie.
Right.
But let's say I wanted to do a podcast with an individual through vMix. I know that vMix is great, but I don't have a direct Ethernet connection yet.
To make sure that it stays
And
good.
I don't want to
Yeah.
take the risk of getting like a high profile interview or conversation with someone, and then the Wi-Fi is choppy, and now I have to upload this at 720. We try to upload everything at least at 1080p.
That's what NFA is the same way.
Yeah.
We want to do 1080 60 if we can. 1080
what we do.
1080 30 is the pretty standard.
1080p is the bit rate, but 60 frame is the 60 is the frames per second.
1080p is the resolution size, and then 60 frames a second. Yeah.
Yes.
So most sports on broadcast television are at 60 frames a second.
Yes.
And what it does is it makes the motion blur a little less, and it has more frames of data, so things can be seen. Replays are crisper at slow speeds.
For the people who me and you understand this, but what is frame rate? When you say like 60 frames per second versus let's say 30, how immense is that?
Okay, so picture 30 frames a second, or the frames a second is how many times that camera in 1 second takes a photo.
Yeah.
To make up that clip in a second.
Because that's what video is.
Correct.
It's a series
just
of
a
pictures.
series of photos, right? Just turned into a certain file type that makes them all play in order, you know? But then, so 60 frames doubles that. So per minute, 30 frames a second has 30 frames. Take it to 60, it's 60 frames. So you're the amount of data that you're getting, the amount of detail that you can hold on to and things like that. But then also, like, because broadcast is typically at 30 frames a second, when you do a 60 frame a second instant replay, you can slow it down and it'll actually be smoother because you got the extra
It's
data.
not chunky and clippy.
Exactly. Yeah, it's got the extra data to pick and choose its drop points instead of it being like these for sure drop points where it's going to look.
That's a good thing to kind of bring up, because that's one of the things I never have to deal with, because I never do like slow motion replay or whatever. But
Sure.
that is something you have to think about.
Yeah, totally. And replay, like this last show, replay is something that that was my big hurdle for the last show. I had an 8 terabyte hard drive go bad the morning of the show. So that was
I don't
cute.
even know how logistically you do. Okay, forgive me. This is like a technical question that I have.
Sure.
But how do you even do replay? Because like I know with like I'm sure vMix has the option clearly, but like
it does.
the only extension that I know is like to record and then to upload further. I know that you could do something live.
Yeah.
Clearly, you could broadcast. But like, how do you broadcast something or record something and then play a replay of what has previously been recorded?
So vMix has an instant replay system in it.
Built in.
Yep.
fucking bless.
And so I have a separate computer. So there's a broadcast vMix computer, and then there's an instant replay vMix
Ooh,
computer.
Talk about that. So you have multiple PCs at every show?
Yeah, so Fraser runs both of them at the same time.
So you have two. So one is
Two.
like the live, and one
One
is
is literally broadcasting everything and has all the graphics in it, all the resources, the cameras, everything go to it for the mixing, right, to be done. Fraser runs that. Then next to Fraser, he has a controller for an instant replay system, and he completely controls that. I'm telling you, Fraser is a stud, man. He's working hard over
Has
there.
he learned a lot?
He's learned a ton, and he's a sponge for it. He likes it. You know what I mean? So we have a ball like figuring out what our limitations are, what can we do, and like what can we grow. And
I mean this when I say this. I used to think that critical thinking was the attribute for the best employee or partner because like critical thinking implies that you guys can overcome an issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I since revoke that thought, and I actually think that caring, like to care,
Absolutely.
is the number one. Because if you care about something, you will learn how to critically think about
Yeah,
that.
well, none of us are willing to be just like complacent.
Yes.
That's the biggest enemy that everyone has to realize is that while
Comfort.
if you're complacent with where your broadcast and stuff is, just realize I'm coming for you.
Dude, I couldn't agree more. I think there are some promotions that are complacent because, dude, when you're in business for like 20, 25 years, I don't fault them. I truly believe that this happens to everybody because it's like the humans that run at age, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're 30, you're young and hungry, and then when you're 50, you're just kind of like let's coast this into the sunset. kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So unless the goal is to like sell to someone new who's gonna breathe new life into it or pump new blood into it, or you're really thinking about this as like a legacy project for yourself, I think it's only a matter of time before not just promotions but product. Actually, I don't want to say that about products. It's like most people that make products will eventually sell, and then they'll drive with like new people, new blood. But like I guess it is like more live performance and things like this. There's a shelf life on everything. They tried to make Coke too. How'd that one go?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah, or Pepsi Clear and however many other ones of those they made.
There are hiccups for everybody, but one of the things I will say about NFA specifically is you can tell that it's a new promotion. You can tell that there's like a lot of people that are passionate and like new blood into the game because like we're getting into this now. Like you guys just did a venue shift to the Armory in St. Louis, which is I'll be the first person to say this. Of all the venues I've ever been at, I fought at casinos, I fought at biker bars, I fought at banquet centers. I wish I would have had somewhere like the Armory to fight at, and I fought at the Family Arena. The Armory is the perfect venue for two reasons. One, all the people spectating can intermingle.
Oh, 100%.
The Family Arena was massive, but the problem is if I'm sitting in section H and my boy's in section J, like across the arena,
Totally.
I'm texting him, right?
Yeah, you're waving from far away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
you're here too, But at the Armory, I could be like, oh my gosh, like there's Matt, and I could literally walk over to you.
Meet me
like,
at the
"How you
bar,
doing?"
yeah.
Yes.
Go see
Meet
you
me
in a
at one of
second.
the 7 bars.
Right, yeah. Are you upstairs or downstairs?
And then, not to mention, I mean, the spatial awareness, you're not congested. You don't have to like, oh, I'm sorry, I gotta get to the bathroom, and you're like, scooting past somebody. And the fucking big screen TV.
Oh,
that
man.
that is so insanely massive of value because you could get the cage side seats and like you're right there and you got the best seat in the house.
Absolutely.
And you can get a GA and you're right there. You got the best seat in the house.
That's it. And
If the production's good. Because if you got like a shitty iPhone camera,
yeah, well, luckily we don't use iPhone cameras to broadcast our fights and put them on the screens. But no, one of the great things about the Armory, like you were kind of pointing out, is we've thrown 1,000 people in there and 1,000 people in Ballpark Village, and it isn't that I love 1,000 people in either one. That's not the problem, but there's something comfortable about Armory with people. Like because there's so much space still to spread out, but it's still, like you were saying, everyone's together though. So it's like this weird paradigm of like, it's not overcrowded, but it doesn't look empty. And it's like, how does that happen? Most venues can't pull that off.
It's because you guys put the cage on a side and not in the middle.
And bring
because
it to
then the
them.
cage is the inhibitor.
Correct.
So like we're kind of like in an oval.
Well, and there'd be no way to put it in the middle either, just because of like how they have that bar. So, but no, the layout of it is great. And the other thing too is like, and I've seen a lot of fighters, not a lot, I've seen a few fighters on social media that'll say like, man, we're in a great time for being MMA fighters because we got things like the Armory and NFA. And look, I see that stuff and I appreciate all of that, especially because our goal, like I said, is trying to make you guys look like stars. Like we want everybody that steps through there to be like, how do you go fight for other people whenever you can't look like this? If it's not, if you're not meeting this bar at another promotion, then maybe reconsider that promotion. You know what I mean?
I cannot agree more. However, that is such a monumental task for a promoter to take. One of the things that I think Brad has as a like pro and a con is that venue, because that venue almost sells itself. But the con in that is, how do you sell a VIP when the best seat in the house can be any seat in the house?
Yeah, it's hard. It's like the new Busch Stadium.
I actually have this is something I wanted to discuss to you in private, but it doesn't matter if I discuss it to you on camera because no one else can duplicate it. Back in the day, there was a promotion called Fight Hard MMA, and they used to do Family Arena. And the genius in that, even though Kenny Nowling was a piece of shit human being, the genius in that was that they gave tickets out for free.
I remember that, sort of.
They would sell the ground floor, I think, for like $10 or $20, right? But they would essentially give out tickets to people, and then they would charge for parking, like $20 for parking, right? I think that's what the Armory needs to do.
Charge parking?
No. Yes, but a different paradigm. Like, you can house, I think Jimmy told me, the COO told me, about 4,800 to 5,200.
Right.
Comfortably.
Yes.
After that, people are getting shoulder to shoulder, and you're getting the fire marshal called.
Right.
So 4,800, let's say, for argument's sake. 4,800 for, like, dude, you'll never see more than like 600 at a Shamrock event, right? Or even at like Synergy or whatever, they'll have like the bottom bowl, so maybe like 5K tops. So 4,800, you're like on a Family Arena level, right? Only you're not in an arena. These people are moving around. They're doing all they want to do. So like, how do you sit there and sell seats? In fact, I would even make the argument that like the amount of square space that the seats and the barricades take are better served with free tickets than seated tickets. Why? The genius in it was B2B and not B2C. It's hard to sell a $55 ticket, especially in a crumbling economy.
Yeah.
It's easy to give someone a free ticket and be like, hey, pay $10 for parking, or pay a $20 cover at the door, and you're not selling a ticket. It just so happens that we're having live fighting on, and you can be in this space while it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a loophole that could make that work, but
And then the ease of that is, if you can pack a place with 2,000 or 3,000 people, the customer base is no longer the individual to sell tickets. It becomes the businesses that want to sponsor the event.
oh, absolutely.
And that's what Kenny would do very wisely. They would make a killing at the Family Arena.
That's crazy. I would love to see it. I mean,
It's something that it's tough. Actually, I'll produce to you like the anecdotal evidence of why I think it's a better system, right? When you sell tickets, you're contingent on the variability of how many tickets you sell, which is, I mean, dude, depending on who you have on the card. If you got a guy that sells like 10 tickets versus a guy who sells 100 tickets, suddenly you're going to start bending over backwards with these people. And for all the fighters and for all the critics that make fun of other promotions that will give favorable matchups to certain people based on ticket selling, can you blame them?
no.
When a person's selling 200 tickets, that's 1/3 of the venue.
I mean, ethically, yes, I can blame them, but
Of course.
but not like in the I
got business hat on now.
Yeah,
I got
business hat.
on,
Yeah,
yeah.
when we're talking like how to make money, that's how you
don't blame
default to that. No.
So then how do you kind of eliminate that from being a variable when you have a fixed income, when you know what you're going to have walking through the door because of the systems that you have in place set up for that? When I have 3 or 4 sponsors, each paying 10 grand, let's say, right? And they're all equal part sponsors, not like a premier sponsor, but 25% sponsor. I know that I'll make $40,000 a show. That's my budget, right?
Sure.
The venue's happy because you're packing the house. Bar, proximity. If you get 2,000 people into a place versus 500 people, how many more people now know about the Armory?
Right.
It might come to the Armory outside of an NFA event, right? Sells itself. All these things sells itself. I would want to do with fighting what tech companies do with people. And they realize that people are not the consumer base. They're actually the product. The product's not fighting. Fighting is what brings the people, but the people are the product. And the product will then bring the sponsorship, the commercial aspect of it.
Right, because
And
now brands can be seen.
And your real customer is neither the fighters nor the people, but it's businesses.
Sure. No, but I mean, what value at a fight does a business have other than being seen? It's hard to have interaction with people at a fight.
Depending on the venue. If you're at an arena, I would agree.
At the Armory,
if you're
though,
at the Armory,
little
where you
different.
can set up tents, where you can have a bar specifically. I mean, you have 5 bars, 6 bars. That's the Kind Goods bar. That's the Anheuser-Busch bar.
Right.
That's that bar, this bar, whatever. And have like the people working with the bartenders aside, obviously not with the bartenders, but like aside from them, there's a business aspect to this that like no one else can produce because they're all thinking arenas. And I think arenas are nice for a lot of reasons. Like if you're a UFC, never not do an arena.
Oh,
But
yeah.
if you're not, don't do an arena.
A facility like what we're in, technically now we make them an arena
Yes.
because we are a sport that has happened there.
Yes.
So
There's a conversation that needs to be had with them about what this could look like. But that being said, it's also like what you're asking for Brad and Marlene to do is an immense task.
Oh,
right?
absolutely. It's completely changed your
Like,
business
hey,
model. Hey, throw that business
completely
model out
change
right
your
quick.
business model. Yeah. Well, actually, I think there's a place to still sell tickets. Like if you want to do VIPs and things
Well,
like
and you
that.
still got pay-per-view. I mean, there's
Fair.
always going to be the pay-per-view sales. Now, the hard part of pay-per-view, though, is how many people locally are going to buy the pay-per-view versus buy a ticket because your market's small. So, like, you have to find people that want to watch fighting. And that's the other part is we got to figure out some marketing and advertising to get that casual fan to want to watch.
I would make the argument that it's all contingent on people. How do you sell pay-per-views if there's only 300 people in the crowd? No one knows about the event. No
Totally.
one's even there.
No,
No
you're
one's there
100% right.
physically, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if there's 4,000 people at an event and social media is blowing up, people that can't make the event or maybe be out or family members or whatever,
Right.
they will buy the pay-per-views.
Yeah.
And not to mention, like, let's say you weren't even selling a pay-per-view. At a venue like that, let's say you weren't even broadcasting it. At a venue like that, you would still want that production value to be its utmost level because of the variable that we were talking about earlier.
Best seat
When
in the
you
house.
when you have that big ass screen TV, not like a little like visor or whatever, or like a TV in the corner.
Yeah.
Dude, this is insane. This one screen can light up the whole armory.
Yeah, you know
That's
what's
how
wild
massive
too
it
is like after Ballpark Village, once we did Ballpark Village, when we would consider like, well, where do we go from here if we were to leave this place before we had the armory or before we were even ever like we were just thinking of like, okay, we've
tough.
made it here. Where do you go from here? Like say
An arena.
yeah, you have to, right? But then you lose things like the massive screen. You
Yes.
lose things like built-in perfect like entertainment pre and post fight. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
things like that too. People underestimate the value of a post fight party being in the armory after we're done. Anyone can come to that.
Yeah.
As soon as that last bell, as soon as the last fight starts and is like on it, as soon as the last fight ends, rather, I think the door's open.
Yeah.
So like literally anyone can come in for the post fight and like have a whole great time with DJ Who or who whatever the entertainment is, you know.
It goes back to what I was saying beforehand. Like, the best shows are not the show. They make, okay, the best shows make an evening, not the other way around. Not the best evening is a show, right? So
Right,
like,
right.
I don't say like, oh, we didn't have dinner and, you know, we went to the Fox Theater and watched Chicago and then we went out for drinks. Or we didn't go out for drinks. We only watched Chicago Theater.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're telling these like fight fans to do. It's like, hey, don't do anything before and after because the doors open at 6, fights start at 7. And then by
Right.
the time you're done, it's 11. So where are you going to drive off to? A lot of bars are going to be closing. So
Exactly.
basically there goes your night. So your night is the fights. Why?
Yeah.
When you're at a venue, your night can be a night
At the venue.
at the venue,
Especially one like the Armory.
which just so happens to have fights.
Yeah. So one of the things too that I think is like MMA in general here is picking up.
Yes.
I'm noticing more casual people that have never been. Like, look, there's always like we know fans that we see regularly. Like, there's a handful of people that I see in the crowd every time. Whenever I have my guys look for camera shots, you know, especially like someone like Javi Tomas. He always brings a big crowd, right? Like, so like I'm kind of used to seeing his section, and like people that like Ray Hayes, you kind of start noticing his section.
And they even go to their little areas that they went
Totally.
to last fight.
Yeah, and so, but what's fun about that is like we're starting to see. I think people care. I mean, like, I'm not saying I think it's a good era for MMA in general right now. Is what I'm trying to say. I think
I'd agree.
that St. Louis's MMA scene is starting to like pick up as far as like casual fans are starting to enjoy it. Like it's like we're starting to pull more normal people out, which only means we can grow.
Well, the variable that we didn't talk about beforehand was like, and you hit the nail on the head, is like, you can go to the Armory for a night out with the boys, and holy shit, like, you ever go to a bar on a Monday and they're doing bingo night?
Right.
You didn't even know you wanted to do bingo night, but we're here.
Till it was there.
Might as well do it. I'm already here. Same thing with the Armory. You may have not even gone there to watch MMA fights.
Mm-hmm.
But you were going to go out there with the boys to have, like, you know, throw bags and just have a good night out.
Totally.
And now there's fights on the TV screen, and you're like, holy shit, what are we doing? But here's the problem. Under the previous business model and with the same venue, you need to pay $55 to get in.
Instead, right.
Now, that ticket price is looked at as a hurdle and not like an invitation. That's why I think business models usually correspond with like the avenue in which you're trying to, you know, supplement the product. So like if you're putting cans of soda in a vending machine,
Mm-hmm.
cash, right? Until the card is invented, what have you. But if you're selling, at a movie theater, you might have a fountain drink because you have someone that's going to actually pour that soda in.
Right.
Same thing can be done with like fighting, where it's like, yeah, fighting is happening, but like the way fighting is done with Synergy over in Kansas City, and the way fighting is done with Shamrock over in Ameristar or River City, NFA doesn't have to necessarily do it the same way. Yes, the product is the same.
And we don't.
Like it could be done differently.
I mean, I look at especially Shamrock in a casino because their environment's so greatly different than ours.
Yeah.
Like, we know every person in our arena is there for us. At a casino, you don't know who's really there for you or who's really there for Shamrock or who's there for, you know what I mean? I'm not saying the people who buy tickets aren't there for it, but, like, it has kind of that ability of what you're talking about. Like, oh, hey, we're here for the casino, but look, there's fights. Like, here's, and they'll comp tickets and stuff. You know what I mean?
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, it has a segue, which is amazing for Shamrock. That is not a knock in any kind of way. That is, like, a really great way to
they'll let you into the casino.
Exactly.
So, subsequently, whether you're
up there or not, exactly, you have the ability to go in, which is what we were talking about with the Armory. It's like that's the caveat, right? Like, you can't go in without the $55 ticket. So what's also crazy about the casino though is it's a vibe. You know what you're gonna get. It's a certain, like, a Shamrock show kind of has, I guess, like an entertainment value. You know what you're going to get at a casino show type situation. There's going to be the food and the other stuff that goes along with it.
I don't think a Shamrock show has changed in the last 5 years.
But my point being, though, is that's not the same.
You know what you're going to get with a Shamrock show because it hasn't changed.
Well, and that could be good or bad. I'm not saying that it's good or bad. I'm saying that it's different than us, though.
For sure.
We are an apple. Like, to compare us to Shamrock would be comparing apples and oranges. Yeah, we share fighters and, like,
production wise, or are you talking about
I'm talking
product?
Overall. I'm talking they're more about your night out at the casino than they are about we're a fight company. We put on hard fights. And I'm not saying they don't put on hard fights too and have good matchmaking. I'm saying simply our goal is to get you the best night of fights and adrenaline pumping action we can give you. Shamrock is there to entertain you for a set amount of hours and keep you in the casino if they can. Different end game. You know what I mean? Our end game is to put on the best fight we can. Their end game is to keep you there.
I have to make one caveat.
Sure.
You guys don't have a dedicated after party. They do.
No, and what they're doing works. Like, I'm saying we're two different things though. They have a whole, not like you said, they have a whole night planned for you. We have a set of fights for you, and we still are working on our after parties and things.
I agree with a lot of what you said. I still stand by my statement of, like, I feel like Shamrock is like the old lion, content, has run the show for a long time. What they do fine. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing I can point out to them as, like, incorrect or, like, bad or anything. They're a fine oiled machine because they've done it so many times.
Right.
And I look at
they
you
have
guys,
their situation set.
I look at you guys as like the stumbling young lion. Like, eventually we'll take over if they don't do anything different. You guys are getting all out of the kinks out of the way, and I'm telling you, dude, with that venue, if you guys took a step back, not you guys, because, like, you're the production team. If Brad and Marlene took a step back and started looking at that as, like, what it could be from an evening perspective, not just like a night of fights.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say Shamrock does well, and that why it's not the same as us.
That's
like,
what
it's
they
apples
do.
to oranges. They are an entertainment company. We're a fight company. Two different things.
Do you want to stay a fight company?
I am into whatever makes our product continue to be our product and be a high-level bar of fighting and production and making it what it is. But then I'm all for spectacle to make it better. Like, I've always said from the beginning, like, there's a reason the UFC went from fight night to the weigh-ins became kind of a press conference situation to fight week to fight week to, you know what I'm saying? Like, it builds, and that's like...
They even do the embedded stuff.
And look, and then there's plenty of things that obviously we can't do that with. They have so many fighters under contract to have them, obligated to do media and things. Again, another apples to oranges situation. But that is what my mindset is of growth for NFA is more like, how do we get now from fight night to fight weekend? And then how do we get from fight weekend to fight week?
Well, I wouldn't even... Okay, caveat. I want to kind of straw man this argument. You guys don't even have a fight night, though, because you guys have the night of fights, but like you don't have something before and something after, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that, yeah.
So wouldn't that be the first step?
I agree. Yeah.
Oh,
No,
okay,
I would think so. Yeah. No, more. I mean, look, DJ Who and the after party is fun with the way that we've got it so far, and that's been a stepping off point to get things going. But there's a lot to still be done with what we can do with our after party. I feel like there's probably like some sort of tailgating or pre-show fun thing we could figure out with the Armory too, or somewhere or something that like makes you want to come be a part of it. You know what I mean? There's just so much growth still to do. Like I feel like we've done a really good job of putting on amazing fights, get your adrenaline going. 3.5 hours, we got your attention, blood pumping, you're hooked. You know what I mean? But then when our show is over, where do we go from there to keep the fan going? Like the UFC didn't make their fights longer to get more fans and to get more people. They made it more of a spectacle.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. And that's the not production Matt guy. I mean, that's I want to see NFA grow. You know, that's my.
Well, if it grows, budget grows, production grows, right?
Yeah. I mean, wait till you see what I do with a little more money.
Yeah. Matt, we've been here for an hour and 45, man.
We have.
I've discussed a lot of the things that I wanted to. I get to this point with every guest, but before I put a nightcap on the conversation, is there anything you want to specifically bring up or talk about?
Yeah, I feel like we've kind of hit them all. You kind of landed on all the things that I thought. You shined a lot of light on the production side. A lot of people don't know how much work it takes to put on these shows.
It was not. I'll pay you the same compliment that I paid Tim. It was not something that I really valued or understood when I was in it. But now that I am a step out and I can kind of view the landscape, I realize how much value it really has.
Appreciate that. I hope that, obviously I want to keep doing fights for as long as I can, and we'll keep doing them and having fun as long as venues have us and there's a budget to keep doing it and having fun with it. But, like, I hope that whenever we're done, like, it sets a bar for, like, look, if you aren't at least this level, what are you even doing? You know what I mean? Like, maybe think twice about it. Maybe step it up. Like, these guys already did this then, and you're still here? Like, come on, guys. You got to make these fighters look good.
I think you've definitely done that. I think the game has changed so much in such a short amount of time.
Technology has changed in a short amount of time, too. Like,
also fair.
Accessibility to the equipment to do what we do is also something that wasn't just readily available 5 years ago.
I think it's contingent on the sport growing, too, because, like, remember, dude, I would fight wherever fights could be held.
Yeah.
Now, these guys are fighting. I remember at the tail end of my amateur career, that's when, because I had fought as an amateur for 4 years while I was going to school. So from my freshman year of college to my senior year of college, I saw, like, oh, shit, I was fighting at Shady Jack's biker bar to, by the end of my amateur career, I was at the Family Arena. So, like, in 4 years, I was like, yo, what is going on? Like, whiplash from the change, right? But to see from, like, the Family Arena, like, when you want to talk about production and stuff like that, to compare to now, I mean, I'll give Shamrock deserves some credit for this, too. Like, the pyrotechnics and all this stuff, the show that they had at the Lake of the Ozarks, like, Shamrock does stuff, too. I think Shamrock gets a bad rep because they're in the same venues for such a prolonged period of time. I think they have limitations and all that. And I think they're just worried about getting the show up and running. But then presented with a rival or presented with a separate entity or another product like yourself, where now capitalism can really flourish and you can see people kind of compete. I want to see the promotions compete, truly. I want you and Shamrock to fucking compete on every fucking show, for every fighter, for every, for pay for the fighters, for production for your guys, for the venues. I want to see you guys compete, because when in competition, the cream rises to the top, so to speak. And then it'll only be beneficial to everybody. Yeah. The viewer buying the ticket will get a better show because the promoter knows that they have to be on the dot their I's and cross their T's. The fighters know that they have to perform because now more eyes are on them from a pay-per-view perspective and from a venue perspective.
Here's a question I want to cap with that in mind. If you were fighting now and you came out on our production level of what it is now, the Armory, how much more pressure does it put it on you to not get starched, to be someone's poster child, to live in infamy for a long time in HD?
You have to understand how fighters think. They'll think the opposite.
They're going to come do the starch.
They're going to start coming out.
Well, no, I would think you would think that. Yeah. I would think that.
Dude,
but
I broke someone's jaw my third fight as an amateur at the Heart of St. Charles Banquet Center that no one will ever see because it was never recorded.
Right, but I'm saying you then, knowing, like, back then you knew, all right, going to that fight, there wasn't going to be a camera in the crowd.
Yeah.
So even if you lost, you aren't going to have to relive that
The
happening.
kind of person that goes into fighting is not the kind of person like don't get me wrong, we're all human. We feel these emotions beforehand. Oh man, I don't want to lose. I don't want to do any of these things.
Right.
But I'll tell you right now, and I've never heard
And
a
on the
fighter-
inside, you don't have to say it on the outside. You on the
no.
inside know
No, that's what
what
I'm
you're
saying.
thinking about. You know what I mean?
Like, I've never talked to another fighter who said something different, and if they do, I don't think fighting is for them. When that door closes and you're in that cage, everyone feels those jitters. Like, oh man, I hope I don't get knocked out. I hope I don't lose, and all these other things. But when that door fucking closes, Matt,
Sure.
I have never felt any feeling like that ever in my life.
It's got to be
And
insane,
I'm
especially
not-
once you hear that pin go in. Now it's real. Now it's over.
I need someone to let me out now.
Yeah. Now I need to get this done so I can get out.
I think if you add the lights, the camera, the action, I think you'll get stars. I don't think you'll get people shying away from the limelight. And the people
Yeah.
that do, I would make the argument that that's better off, because then people like the UFC, Bellator, whatever, like the next level, right? They'll only get a better product because you guys help refine these people.
Ray
at an
Hayes,
earlier
great
rate.
example of using our production value to accelerate. He have you ever look, he is an incredible fighter to watch, and he's very entertaining in his antics and all that. But I don't think people understand how hyper aware he is of my cameraman when he wins. This is nothing we've ever talked about. His last fight, if you watch him win, he does the crotch chop. DX, love the throw out. He looks, he sees Lincoln. He runs over to Lincoln's side, climbs the thing, and looks directly at him and dusts his shoulders off right in the camera. If you're a fighter at home, learn awareness, showmanship. Because look, I'll make you shine if you get in the right spot. You know what I mean?
And that's kind of what I was saying. If you give these fighters, not every fighter, but if you give some of these fighters the lights, the camera, the action, the stars will come out to shine.
Moments like that where the fighters have realization and you see them shine and they position themselves for my guys to be able to capture it the best is actually as good to me as any finish. Because that's them celebrating in the moment in the most real way in front of you as much as you can see it. Like that's like I have a weird, this is a weird thing about me. A weird guilty pleasure of mine is to watch people like do auditions for talent shows and stuff. Because I have a weakness for when they win. Like, not a win the whole show. When they win the crowd over and they have their moment. I'm getting a little steamy thinking about it. That stuff messes with me, man. It's like, I
About,
love
like, the
to see you.
voice or-
It's the, you are shining. You're a normal person shining in front of a massive place that you wouldn't normally be. Oh, give me goosebumps thinking about it. I'm like, ooh, a little steamy. But it's just like does something to me to see someone have that moment. So, like, for me to get to create that angle and that moment with you where it's stuck in time now, that's what you're going to watch when you go back. Oh, man. You see it, man? I'm getting a little teary-eyed.
That's the most sensitive I've ever seen, Matt.
Oh, yeah. I don't let it show very often.
beautiful.
But that's the kind of shit I like, man. It's like whenever you're winning, this is your glory moment, and I'm helping you fucking cash it in. You know what I mean?
Matt McElwrath.
Carry on.
I appreciate you, my man.
Yeah, man.